takes it in overtime. Brady can chop, breakaway shoots, scores!
Welcome to Sens Talk. My name is Brandon, and I am your host. Today is Tuesday, May 16th. It's one day after the official deadline for bidders or prospective bidders that wanted to purchase your Ottawa Senators. Yesterday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time was the deadline to do so. When it was all said and done and the dust settled, 4 people or 4 groups remained and submitted a binding bid and a deposit to potentially purchase your Ottawa Senators. The 4 bidders that remain after the 5 o'clock binding deadline was Toronto Steve Apostopoulos. He bid on the Washington Commanders for $6 billion. Michael Andlauer, a minority owner of the Montreal Canadiens. Michael Kimmel, former minority owners of the Pittsburgh Penguins. That bid as well has The Weeknd, a Canadian superstar artist, and Nico Sparks, an LA-based producer with Snoop Dogg involved in the consortium, and as well a First Nations group, adding a local element to the bid. By the way, shout out to Owl & Co. Grooming with the mullet in full action and full swing right now. Owl & Co. is absolutely coming clutch, making my hair smell the best it possibly can smell. I highly recommend this product. You guys know I don't push products that I don't believe in. So go to owlandcogrooming.com, use the code SENSTALK15. You will save 15% off your first order. And by the way, a cool Sens Twitter collab there. 2 Sens fans collabed. There's some great merch on owlandcogrooming.com as well. So make sure to check that out as well. Now for today's episode, I have a very special guest joining us. AJ Perez of Front Office Sports is joining us today to discuss his report last night that one of the bids was structured in a way, quote unquote, that could lead to issues with its viability. Just want to go quickly over what's next in this process. The 4 bids, the 4 binding bids with the deposit, all have been placed. So what happens next? Well, here's what happens. Firstly, the organization will take the next week, according to Sportico, to review the bids, which, by the way, during that timeline can be altered. It's also been reported from Bruce Garriock that GSB, the bank involved in this whole process, may look to actually intertwine 2 bids together to make one large consortium ownership group. That's something to be on the lookout for as well. And if it happens, you're at the right place here on youtube.com/SensTalk. We'll have the latest for you, of course, if that happens. So with that, let's talk to the man himself, AJ Perez, to get down to all the answers. Whose bid was structured in a way that may lead to issues? Who's the front runner? And more. Let's discuss it all with AJ Perez right now. So AJ, what do we know right now about the bid for the Ottawa Senators that was structured in a way that might actually make them not get the bid itself?
Yeah, we don't know a lot at this point, and we don't know which one of the 4 bidders that has the issues. This is the weird time where the final binding bids are in now, and they're, from what I was told, they're all pretty close. They're all close to $1 billion. So it really becomes down to the family, the daughters, to see who they're most comfortable with, because as Bruce reported, they're going to be holding 10% of the team most likely going forward. So they're going to have a major say. When that happens, it takes a little longer because they're not only, there are some team sales I've covered where their family's like, done, take the highest money. We'll just get us out of here. But when a family holds 10% like that, or even a 5% chunk, they want to make sure it gets going into some, the best hands. They're going to be sticking around. They're going to be a little bit accountable still, even though they're not going to have much of a say on day-to-day operations. But they're going to be look to in the community, and I'm like, what you stick us with this guy? There's that. So what we don't know the issues in the past. I'll speak on not about this sale, but the past. So it can be liquidity. The main owner may not have enough capital, and no indication that this is the case here. From my sources, they're all 4 have the money now. So if that's the case, there could be concerns over some of the partners, and we don't know all the partners. Steve's bid. I'll just say Steve. I can say Apostolopoulos. So when he bid for the Commanders, first of all, it was a $6 billion. That's how much the team went for here. Josh Harris, Devils and Sixers co-owner, got the team, and he'll be finalized in the next several weeks. But when that happened, when he was a bidder for us, we could never figure out who the other partners were. I was told there are partners with Steve, and the bid's looking a lot better than his bid has for the Commanders. Granted, it's $5 billion less, so I hope so. The Kimmel Group seems to be, from people I talk to, I wouldn't say they're in the lead, but they seem kind of from people I talk to that they kind of may have a little bit of an inside track, but that's not ruling any of the three out.
So what makes you believe that the Kimmels, that was actually going to be my next question, because a couple of things you mentioned there is really interesting. One, you mentioned liquidity, and that might be the issue with the bid that might not go through. Could the Sens debt, and I want to mention the other things later, but can the Sens debt be a part of that equation as well? Just want to mention that really quickly.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of things that like there's where they're going to play next, and it's like everybody's crapping on the arena. I mean, it's not the worst arena in the NHL. I mean, it's not the best, but there's no hurry.
Yeah.
And you can pay that debt down while you're looking for the site if it's a flats or one of the other three locations in downtown. That's so you have to figure that in, and also so you have to look down the road. So not only are you going to be picking the next owner, you're going to pick the next person maybe most likely to land a really nice arena in downtown Ottawa. So that's so there are things to think about. Yeah, Kimmel's name is that's like that's people I talk to a lot of bankers who have done these sales before, and that seems like the name that they think has the most promise at this point. But it's an open game, and it's going to be all up to the Dodgers.
For the people watching, the Kimmel family are real estate developers. They definitely know a thing or two about building event centers. As well, they have the Weekend attached, a Canadian artist, so there's your celebrity factor as well. But do you think the Weekend, because you mentioned all four of the bids are similar in terms of the range, close to $1 billion, is the Kimmel, the Weekend bid, the one that passed the $1 billion mark?
I don't know that. There's we don't. It's getting. They're really quiet. I think the next, and they're still reviewing it. Sal, the firm based in New York is reviewing those bids. I was told. He won't comment, but so it's kind of so we're if this is they've kind of sent some like a lot of this information to the NHL already. That they have to be comfortable with before it moves forward. We don't need to want another bankrupt donor. So they want to see not only if they have the money, but any problems with criminal background or anything else. They're going to want to look at that. So yeah, there's the celebrity factor is still there. You mentioned the Weekend. We got Snoop Dogg with Nico Sparks' group. So Ryan Reynolds leaving, which they. From what I was told, it was kind of like it was more about a frustration over the process more than it was that they didn't have the money for it or didn't want to buy it. They did. From my sources are telling me over the last since it wasn't since that kind of came out last week. Yeah, it was just kind of more of a frustration with the process, really.
Well, that's really unfortunate. I saw Elliot Freeman mention something similar on the 32 Thoughts podcast. Yeah, it just seems like I don't want to say it, but it seems like egos on both sides has kind of gone in the way. And, we saw a report from Bruce Garriock yesterday, as I'll mention later in this video, saying that Michael Andlauer, who I've mentioned for quite some time, is one of the underdogs, frankly, to win this bid. He was the front runner at the beginning before all the big names came in. He's reached out to Ryan Reynolds in the past. It seems like he might be doing so in the future if he wins the bid. So I think that's a wild card right there as well. But like you said, the Kimmel family, that kind of has everything you want. Same with Nico Sparks, I guess. You have the pockets, you have the star pedigree, you have the financial backing, like I just said. So no matter what happens, all four bids for Ottawa, whoever's selected, it's going to be a good case scenario for Ottawa. They're going to be in good hands, far better in terms of financial capital than they have ever been in franchise history. So right off the bat, that looks good. After that, who knows? We don't know these people personally. You just have to assume it's going to work out, and the NHL knows what's best, and GSP knows what's best. But, you mentioned Steve A at the beginning. Everyone watching this, most people watching this are Sens fans. They know all about the Kimmel family. They know all about Nico Sparks and Snoop Dogg and that great bid, and Michael Andlauer, right? So when you have all three of those bids, that we already know a lot about that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Steve A? You've covered him specifically, of course, with the Commander sale. What about Steve A should be attractive for the Ottawa Senators? And what should the Senator faithful expect from Steve A if he does successfully win the bid?
Yeah, we don't know a lot about him, actually. It's kind of like I did a big old story about 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. And, one thing that was floated out there is that he attended or graduated from Harvard, that Bloomberg reported, that. And I was able to, kind of, call that and call that out. It didn't happen. And he never, was never a full-time student there. He was never graduated from there.
Whoa.
So, yeah. So there's certain things that, and this has angered Steve A's people. But I have, called, because when you're talking about $6 billion, that's a lot of money. $1 billion is a lot of money. But to ask where it's coming from in the NFL, 30% liquidity, you need. So for a $6.8 for a $6 billion bid, you have to have $1.8 billion cash, which is a lot more than you're going to be paying, almost twice as much you're going to be paying overall, which you can finance it. You can finance it and get partners for the rest of it. So it's like a lot of things. Like they have the Pickering development in Ontario. They have a couple other, but the family, when his dad died a couple years ago, the family valuation was $4 billion Canadian. So that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But but we don't know how much he has siblings and how much it was cut up and how much he got. We don't know how he has a couple businesses. We don't know how much money that how
because they're private firms.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know. But it's from people I talk to, it's much different situation than what happened here in DC. Though there's less concerns about all the financials and all the other stuff. He has partners, and the bid looks like it conforms.
Yeah, interesting. And I mentioned this on Twitter yesterday. Like you said yourself, Steve A. We'll call him Steve A. It's a little easier, and I do apologize. I usually butcher the name. If he wins the bid, I promise I will memorize how to say the last name. Apostolopoulos, I think. Did I say it wrong? Let's practice.
I've been saying Apostolopoulos, so maybe I could be saying it totally wrong. But yeah, it's
we'll go with what you said.
I did a fist bump on TV when I mentioned his name correctly. I did a fist bump. I was doing a DC TV station. I was like, I got it right for the first time. So I usually go by Steve A myself. So yeah, there's that. Right? So it's like, and I've been looking at Nico Sparks' background and how he's coming up with the money, and I'm working on this story on that now. Nico's a little easier to find the kind of where it's coming from than even Steve A, which is kind of nuts since he's in California, and he has investors in Canada and in the UK. So it's kind of like so that's the whole thing. It's like, the issue in pro sports now is there going to be any Saudi money? Is there going to be any Qatari money? Where is this money coming from? Because they're a huge investor in Fanatics. The Saudi PIF fund is, $1 billion investment in Fanatics, and Fanatics has deals with every major sport and the NCAA here in the States. So, there's already Saudi money in sports. Exactly. So there's already Saudi money in sports. The next step is, will they have control of a team or be the major money behind a team? Will that be allowed to happen? We have no indication there's any Saudi money involved in this one, but that's always a question we have when we cover these sales. Yeah, not yet. Yeah, it could.
So we'll see what happens. Yeah. But what I do want to say is thank you firstly for joining. But I want to say we know all about Steve A now. We know about the Kimmel family, and thank you for letting us know that it seems like he has a bit of an edge. We know about Michael Andlauer. We'll see what happens with Ryan Reynolds potentially. And of course, we know about the Nico Sparks Snoop Dogg bid, which, by the way, is backed by $15 billion. So, a lot of money there. There's a lot of money everywhere.
That's what they say it's worth.
Yeah. So no matter what happens, the Sens seem to be in good hands. I trust this process has gone on for far too long. So I trust that GSP, the NHL, the board of directors, and the Sens org are going to pick the right person or the right group to form the new ownership. And I'm really excited to see how this plays out. My bet, personally, I think Michael Andlauer is going to win it. I think he's going to bring in Ryan Reynolds, and I think that's what's going to happen. He already has his foot in the door with the Montreal Canadiens. And by the way, the Kimmels used to own the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I understand that. I do. Yeah. But the Pittsburgh Penguins are not the Montreal Canadiens. If you own a portion of the Montreal Canadiens, that's like the creme of the NHL, basically. I'm sorry to say, as a Sens fan, because they are one of the richest or highest valued, NHL franchises ever. Right, they're top three, New York and Toronto. So 10% is not something to laugh at or scoff at. Sorry. So exactly. And more importantly, he's been reported for quite some time to be the front runner until the big names like Reynolds and Snoop Dogg and whatever got involved. So I still think he has the inside edge. He has his foot in the door. He knows how the NHL operates. He has a developer, real estate background as well. Heavy pockets, very deep pockets. So I personally think Michael Andlauer is the front runner. You mentioned Kimmel. Is that what you're sticking with before we end this video?
I could be any of the four at this point, but Kimmel's the name I've been hearing the last 24 hours, a little more.
Well, AJ, I appreciate you coming on. Where can everyone read your stuff and follow you?
Frontofficesports.com. We have a newsletter, goes out twice a day, AM and PM newsletter. And you can follow me on Twitter at BYAJ Perez. That's by AJ Perez.
Thank you, AJ, for joining. By the way, be on the lookout later this offseason. We're going to have AJ back on. Lots of great stories, including a time he faced Alexander Ovechkin. Be on the lookout for that later this offseason. AJ, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Before we end the video, I want to say again, thank you to AJ Perez for joining the show on such short notice. I really appreciate it. Once again, we'll have to have you on again sometime very soon in this off season, but I really appreciate you joining us on such a pinch. Now, with that, I want to mention this as well. I forgot to mention it during our interview portion of this video, but last night on TSN, Bruce Garriock reported that Jeffrey Kimmel as AJ Perez mentioned, and Michael Andlauer are the two frontrunners right now, quote unquote, to be the next owners of your Ottawa Senators. Now, of course, we'll keep you updated here on youtube.com/SensTalk if that changes or if we get more news on ownership, but that's the latest we know right now. Apparently, Andlauer and the Kimmel Group are the two in the lead, and the Andlauer bid may as well attach Ryan Reynolds later on if they are selected as the winners, as I mentioned in our interview with AJ Perez moments ago. So that's the latest we know. We may hear as early as Wednesday who won the bid, but within the next week we should know tentatively who is going to be the next owners of your Ottawa Senators. Stay tuned here, of course, for the latest. Besides that, thank you all for watching. I appreciate your support. I'll see you all very, very soon. Go Sens, go.